So with a scaling mindset, you don't need to figure out everything yourself. In fact, there's very little you need to figure out yourself because you need a team. That's a who, not how mentality. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how to build your team and why that first person you need to get on board might be sitting at your dinner table. You're going to learn how to build the right team, not trying to do everything yourself. And it's really the fastest way to get your first apartment deal done. I'm going to walk you through who should be on that team, how to find them, and then with your team in place, you leverage their experience so that brokers and investors take you seriously, even if you've never done a deal before. And so building your team is the secret to breaking into the game without your own track record. Let's get into it. Let me tell you why a team is so important, right? 3 reasons. Number 1, to overcome your lack of apartment investing experience. You don't actually need your own investing experience because you can leverage the experience of your professional team so that brokers and investors take you seriously. The second reason you need a team is to raise enough capital to fund your deals by leveraging partners, capital raisers. And the third reason is to avoid big mistakes by having experienced advisors on your team to guide you through the process, look over your shoulder. So how do you build the right team? Okay, we're going to do this in 3 parts. Part 1 is we're going to build your team of professionals so you can leverage your track record. Part 2, we're going to find the right partners that you can partner with for either deal flow or capital. And then we're going to talk about how to leverage advisors to scale faster and avoid big mistakes. Now, before I get into this thing, let me tell you, the first person on your team should be your spouse. Okay, I've observed that people who have the support of their spouse are more successful. Okay, it's really helpful to be on the same page as your spouse, especially about something as important as your financial future. So sit them down and talk about your vision for the future, right? About being able to not have to work for money, have to spend 10 hours, whatever, working, be able to spend more time with them and your children if you have children. And I'm not saying your spouse needs to be in the business themselves. That's not required. But they should be supportive. They should be on the same page about what you're trying to do. And so at a minimum, they should be involved in your decision to become financially free with real estate because it affects the future of your family. So the first member of your team should be your spouse. All right. The next part is building your team of professionals. And the reason you want to do that is so you can leverage your track record. Now, here are the most important team members from the beginning. Obviously, brokers, that's how you get deals. Lenders, because they're the key to getting financing, but they also help you with analyzing deals, right? Because if a deal pencils for a lender, there's a good chance it also is going to work for you and your investors. An attorney is very important because they handle the closing. They can advise you around the legalities of raising capital as well. Now, there's other team members that you're going to eventually be on your team, like a CPA, whatever, but these are the most important ones. The most important one, though, that I've left off the list is your property manager. Now, here's why. Here's why the property manager is so important. They are your boots on the ground. I'm going to assume that you're going to be investing out of area, okay? 80% of our students are investing out of area. You're going to have to hop on a plane or drive 8 hours to get there. It's going to be a remote thing, and that's totally fine because of your property manager, because they can actually visit the property. They can look at it. They have eyes on it. They're going to help with the underwriting. And they're not just there to manage your property. The smart ones, they're doing business development. They know that if they help you get the deal, you're most likely to hire them to manage the property, which is actually true. So they're going to help you with the underwriting. As you'll see in a later training, they're absolutely critical in helping you underwrite deals so you don't have to guess at the numbers. And they're going to help you with due diligence. Once you actually have it on a contract, they're likely going to bring in, they're going to walk the property with you. They're going to bring their general contractor, going to walk all the units, most likely for free. They're very helpful in this regard. They're also, of course, going to manage the property. They are the key to executing your business plan because you can have a value-add business plan. And if you don't have a good property manager, then you're going to have trouble executing the business plan. Now, what's the best way to work with your property manager, right? How do I find them? Okay. The first thing you do is you establish a relationship virtually. You can do this in a variety of different ways, referrals, online, etc. Then you want to meet them in person. Once you have your top 3, okay, you have a bunch of calls and Zoom calls, and you're like, I like these 3. Then you want to meet them in person and really build a rapport. You visit some of the properties, take them to lunch, whatever the case may be, and then involve them in your underwriting. You're involving them really. Once you have your top property management company, you're going to involve them in the process. Now, you're going to involve them for every single deal you get, right? But when you have a letter of intent signed, for example, you have like a real deal, and you can show this to them that you have a real deal, they'll get involved and they'll help you with the underwriting, which is the analysis. And then you can ask them to visit the property once the LOI is signed or the contract is signed or before. Now, the single best way to find these A players on your team is referrals. Now, you can search on the internet, you can go to whatever websites, but I like referrals better than any other method. In fact, I don't want just referrals from someone who knows someone, like a neighbor who knows someone who knows someone. I'm talking about people who have done business. I'm talking about actual business referrals, right? And so the best way to do that, whenever you talk to somebody, okay, when you're talking to brokers, you're first going to talk to brokers, going to get a deal flow. We're going to talk about it in a later training when we get into the tactic of analyzing deals and talking to brokers. But when you're talking to brokers, you're going to ask them for referrals for everybody. You want insurance brokers, you want property managers, you want lenders. They are your gateway into your market. Brokers know everybody, right? And you really want to ask everybody, and you want to be systematic about this. So you want to write these things down. When you talking to someone, you get referrals to 2 or 3 people, write it down, follow up with that person and keep the other person, thank the other person and follow up with them, and really kind of be systematic about your networking. Because what you're doing is you're building your team. Now, the cool thing about all this stuff is you can build your team in probably 30 days. Just be a little systematic about it and really ask for referrals. I think to me, it's the most powerful way than Googling online. Let's talk about part 2. You want to attract the right partners for deal flow and for capital. And this is why this is important. And I have alluded to this, but we're going to go deep on it now, that joint venturing is very common. And this is there are 2 primary roles in a syndication. The first primary role is a capital raiser, and the second one is a deal finder. Let's talk about the deal finder first. Now, in the beginning, deal finder and capital raiser are personality types. No one is born being a deal finder and they know how to analyze deals, and no one's naturally born being capital raising money. You still have to know stuff, but what I'm saying is there are certain personalities, and some people gravitate towards one or the other. The deal finder, in my experience, they're gonna end up calling brokers, analyzing deals, and making offers. But this person tends to like numbers and spreadsheets, like me. And they may not love talking to brokers at first, but then it becomes easier because the conversation is around numbers, and they really like numbers. They're detail-oriented, so they're great at doing due diligence, where attention to detail matters and nothing is overlooked. A lot of deal finders have backgrounds in engineering or finance and things of that nature. Now, the capital raiser personality is a little bit different. They're typically a relationship person. They got a gift of gab. Talking to strangers at networking events comes naturally to them. They've got a bunch of stories and making it easy for people to like them. And they have some kind of sales background. They're a broker, insurance broker, or whatever. And as a result, they know how to close. They have a strong work ethic, and things of that nature, right? And so those people naturally gravitate towards the capital raising side. Which one are you? Are you a deal finder, or are you more of a deal finder personality or more a capital raiser personality? Maybe you're both, okay? But see if you can pick one. If I had to put a gun in your head, which one? Because the thing is, even though you could do both, that doesn't mean you should do both. You should pick one or the other. Which one do you more naturally gravitate? Do you see yourself more talking to brokers, analyzing deals, making deals that way, or do you see yourself raising? Now, again, we're talking about raising capital in a later part of this training, okay? But I'm talking about from a personality perspective. What is your preference? My point is that when you're building your team, be cognizant of what you are. Because like I said, if you feel like you're both, you got to pick one or the other. Because these joint ventures are so powerful, as we'll see in a second, that even though you could do both, that doesn't mean you should. You should pick one, because it is much more powerful to have one person be accountable for deal flow, another person be accountable for raising capital. It doesn't mean that the deal finder shouldn't know how to raise capital. They should. In fact, they should raise capital also. And it doesn't mean the capital raiser doesn't know how to analyze deals. In fact, they should. Otherwise, they can't explain it to investors. But the point is, there's two in a lane, and one's accountable for one, and one's accountable to the other. That's typically how it works. So make sure that as you're building your team, you're aware of what personality type you are, and then look for your counterpart. Now, part 3 is how to leverage advisors to scale faster and avoid big mistakes. And the idea of advisor in your team, again, is a foreign thing, because I didn't necessarily understand that when I got started. Now, let me tell you about my $1 million mistake, because the one thing I would advise my younger self, it would be to work with an experienced advisor whenever I embark on a new journey. Anything. Why am I constantly figuring out things out myself? And it's because I'm so smart that I could figure everything out myself, and I don't need any help. And that is really fundamentally has been my biggest mistake. Now, I stopped making this mistake about 10, 15 years ago, but early on in my entrepreneurial journey, that's exactly what I did. In fact, this particular mistake cost me over $1 million. I may have mentioned this in my story in earlier training, but when I quit my job with a bunch of money from my software company, when I quit that job in 2005, my ticket to financial freedom was to invest in a pizza franchise. And I followed the playbook. It was set up like a passive investment. I put up the money, hired Chris in the middle to run the whole daggone thing. And it went well, okay? If you remember, it went well for a couple of years. I got up to 8 restaurants until the recession hit, and it changed everything. And I subsequently lost my IPO millions, added $200,000 on debt on top of it, and literally lost my house. Now, in hindsight, having an experienced advisor by my side would have prevented most or even all of this unnecessary pain. Like if I would have mentored myself, I would have advised myself to ask questions I never thought to ask in the very beginning. For example, I shouldn't have just checked the references the franchisor provided and gave to me, because everyone's going to provide you the references of everybody who's crushing it. I should have asked to see the numbers from the average franchisee. Had I done this, I would have discovered that they weren't very profitable at all. And this one piece of advice would have slowed my decision to join that franchise, and that may have affected my decision to get into the restaurant business in the first place. The other thing a mentor would have advised is to scale more cautiously, which is not what I did. I had 3 restaurants in the first 12 months. Scaling, baby. Let's go big or go home. Now, this advisor would have also advised me to not buy other locations that were failing. That was stupid. Okay. Now, these mistakes, or this one mistake of not having a mentor look over my shoulder, literally cost me my IPO millions. I didn't have a mentor when I bought my first apartment building either, which I hinted at either. The deal was a nightmare because I insisted on going at it by myself. But if you remember my story from earlier, I shouldn't have bought a property in DC. I should have hired the raw property manager to deal with my tenant program. I should have done a legal background on the tenants. I could have avoided all of this by working with someone more experienced. On the other hand, I have actually had some experienced advisors. Let me tell you about my $1 million return. When I started flipping houses inexplicably, I actually hired a mentor. It was a wholesale coach, okay? And the reason I hired a coach, because to me, it would have taken me too long to figure all this stuff out. Like, like, how do I even market? How do I make the phone ring? Oh, you send postcards. Well, what goes in a postcard? Well, these words go in a postcard. These colors you got to use. Well, how do I get the list? Here's how you get the list. Oh, you also put up bandit signs. You do all these things. Like, my gosh, it would have taken me forever to figure that stuff out. So I wanted to cut all that stuff short, and so that was smart. And, you know, I paid this guy a lot of money, and I actually, on the first, maybe a no surprise. My first postcard campaign, I got 2 deals off that postcard campaign. I made $110,000 off those 2 flips, which was as much as my salary was in the software company, which was wild. And that positioned me to flip 30 plus houses, generating more than $750,000 in profits in 3 years. So the value of that one mentoring relationship was nearly $1 million. And so what I'm telling you is my experience has been that every time I didn't have a mentor, it cost me a lot of time and money. And every time I did have a mentor, the return was huge, right? So my message to you is, don't do what I have done, okay? Don't be like me. Don't do what I did, which is try to figure everything out on your own and not having someone experienced on your team. This is why I'm talking about the scaling mindset and building your team, okay? You got to have a team. So this is your scaling team. This is your checklist. Get your spouse on board. Sit him or her down, say, hey, I want to do this financial freedom thing, whatever your plan is. Hopefully I can steer you to multifamily. Here's the thing we're going to do. It's very important for our family. Can we get on the same page about that? You're going to build your team of professionals. Okay, you're going to have your property manager on board. You're going to have a lender on board. We're going to use them in a later training. Believe me, there's going to be other professionals that you lean on. And the cool thing about it is now you can leverage their collective track record. When you talk to a broker, they're not even going to ask you what's your background, what's your track record, because you're going to tell them, hey, I'm working with XYZ, a property management company. I'm working with XYZ lender. They originated $1 billion of loans. I've got my real estate attorney, and I have an experienced advisor, possibly another general partner on my team looking on my shoulder. You're talking about your team. And now no one cares about the fact that you've never done an apartment building before. No one does. So you got to build your team of professionals so you can leverage your track record. You're also going to start networking in a very intentional way. If you're more of a deal finder, start looking more of a capital raiser. The thing that drives me crazy is 2 or more deal finders getting together so they're not alone. They can support each other. But why are you partnering with another deal finder? You already have a deal. You're already the deal finder. You already have a numbers person. You already understand all that stuff. Go partner with a capital raiser. If you're a capital raiser, don't partner with another capital raiser. What you need is deal flow. So be very intentional with how you partner in your scaling team as well. And then make sure you recruit 1 or more experienced operators around you. And you could create like an advisory board, and you can either find volunteer advisors. You may have to pay for your advisor, but my goodness, find someone who can advise you, who's done what you have done. It'll prevent so much misery on your journey to financial freedom. Okay, so let's summarize. The key to scaling is a who, not how mindset. And that's the mindset you need to scale. The biggest realization is that you need to stop asking how questions and start asking more who questions. And it's not about figuring stuff out, but building a team around you and leveraging other people's resources, talents, or networks, right? So if you don't know something, like with single family houses, I'd figure it out, right? If you're scaling, you're working with professionals on your team, or you partner with an experienced syndicator or operator who can look over your shoulder. Why figure things out on your own when you don't need to? And figure stuff on your own is much harder and takes a lot longer, right? If you don't have the down payment to buy a rental property, well, with single family houses, you'd have to wait and save enough, or you get a HELOC on your home. But if you're scaling with a scaling mindset, you don't ask the question, how can I get a down payment? You ask, who can get me one, right? And now you're partnering with limited partners or with a capital raising partner or both. Did you see how a scaling mindset changes everything? Because a scaling mindset actually makes things easier than investing in single family houses, because you don't have to figure everything out yourself. You don't have to do all the work. You leverage your team instead. It's an absolute game changer. All right, now you know the secret to scaling isn't doing more yourself. It's building the right team so you can leverage their track record, raise capital, and avoid costly mistakes. But here's the thing, most investors still get stuck. Even if they know about the scaling mindset, they know about building their team, but they still never commit to the journey. It's because a lot of what I call the stinking thinking, the things people sell themselves that prevent them from taking the next step. And I won't have that. That's exactly what we're going to do fix in this next video. I'm going to unpack the real reasons most investors never actually get out of the gates. And they have a lot of limiting beliefs around money, about time, not feeling ready, not knowing everything, not knowing enough. And I'm going to show you how to break through all of that with a scaling mindset. So don't stop now, head straight into the next video. And if you already know you want support building your team and doing your first deal, this is exactly what our mentors help people do every single day. So you can schedule a call with us to explore what that would look like. Just click the link below around this video to do that as well. All right, let's get right into some of those limiting and false beliefs that people have around getting started and taking the next step.